Hey, folks, welcome to episode 11 of What's Next Beyond Service. Today's episode is Coffee Country. And most of you folks that love coffee probably absolutely knew that yesterday was National Coffee Day. So if you are into coffee, you're going to really like today's guest. And we'll talk about that in a second. Sarah, good to see you again. Thanks so much for all you do with helping this show do what it does, and making sure that I stay straight. Sometimes that's kind of hard to do, but always much appreciated.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, today we have with us Dan Horgan. He's going to introduce himself here and, kind of an elevator pitch, tell us a little bit about who he is. And then we're just going to dive right into all the good stuff he's done. I was telling him in the pregame chat here that I went back and looked at his LinkedIn profile and forgot about all the really cool stuff and the things that he did in the military and, life after the military. So we'll get into that. But without further ado, Dan, take it away. Tell us what you got.
Well, thanks first for having me, Sarah, Scott. I definitely appreciate it. I know on LinkedIn, I said radical transparency and laughter. So we'll make sure that we're trying to have fun. My brief background. So I joined the Air Force in 1991, right? I was sitting at a community college and A-10s were flying overhead from Martin State Airport. So I was sitting at a community college there in Maryland and Baltimore, joined, did president, and real quick. So I did presidential honor guard at Bowling Air Force Base. So I did all the funerals already at Arlington, for the Air Force, a couple of wreath laying ceremonies. Special duty assignment. They were like, man, you will get a pick of what you want to do. It was great. Yeah. So they said, you can pick Wyoming or North Dakota. Like that was my, so I went up to North Dakota, and then I was a missile cop up in North Dakota, guarding the missile fields up there. My daughter was born up there. We moved to, I was like, because North Dakota is really cold. If
a little bit, yeah.
Minot is about 40, don't quote me, like say 40 miles from the Canadian border, super cold. Anyway, went over to AWACS. So we PCS down to Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma, and I flew on the back of AWACS for about 4 years, being a surveillance technician flying on AWACS. That was great. It's where I got divorced, unfortunately, right? That's, it's the military way. That's met my wife, Bethany. So we will have our 21-year anniversary here in March.
Wow, big deal.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thanks. Yeah. So did that. And that's where, so we were talking about my diversity, my guard and reserve time. So then I went into the reserves. So I was in the Air Force Reserves as security forces. When back in the day, it was security police, for the Air Force.
Right.
9/11 happened. Had all a bunch of that, got Raven. So the Air Force has Raven, so I was Raven certified. But then it's really my cool guy job. I talk about it was 2007. I became a TAC-P, became a JTAC, deployed in 2011 with 10th Mountain and went down by Kandahar. And even during all that time frame, oh, by the way, again, when I was in the Guard, I was a Baltimore City cop. So I'm in Baltimore, Maryland as a narcotics detective, SWAT team member. I had a kind of career there through those 7 years. So that was pretty good. Did some contracting in Afghanistan. ISR, I was a site lead doing a bunch of ISR for the King Air stuff. So I was site lead there. Came back to the States because deploying every 60 days to Afghanistan, it sucked. Great money, but it sucked. But again, Scott, now you and I talked. It was it's a cheating method when you do defense contracting right out of the military, because you're using your military skill, right? I mean, it's great money and it's good. And the companies I worked with are great, but again, it's not true, right? You're outside of it. Came back, was working inside the States for a company in Oklahoma City. And that's kind of really where I started sinking my teeth into true business. And I ended up kind of becoming my friend Stan. I became the sergeant major, first sergeant for the CEO of an aviation company. But then that's where we were talking about I'm now military dependent. So my wife is in the Guard and she's like, hey, I'm going to try to take some orders down to Texas. I was like, wow, sure. Got it. I was like, who won't pick me up, right? I got all this military experience, right? I love to say hire a master sergeant, not a master's degree.
Right, right.
And it took a couple of months, but I eventually got on with Black Rifle. And so that's where I'm at now. I was Black Rifle, been Black Rifle for a little over 2.5 years. I
Right.
like to actually say it's like dog years though. Just because it's such a startup. So we're finishing up year 7, right? We started in 2014 and things are moving so quick. The growth is so exponential. It's great. So 2.5 years is really crazy. But I work directly for the owner, Evan Hafer of the company. So
Right.
being inside the mine with the owners and the executive staff has been enlightening. And
Oh,
that's
absolutely.
I'm sitting in San Antonio. This is my dining room. We were talking about my coffee bags. You know, we're coffee gurus around the house, obviously. So yeah, thank you.
No, absolutely. And, there's so much there. Just I want to, kind of sink my teeth
Yeah.
into, and the end part where you were talking about a startup. I mean, you're absolutely right. When you're in a startup, you have a job, but then you have so many other jobs, right? 'Cause everyone's rolling up their sleeves, especially in the very beginning. In the very beginning, everyone is pitching in, and even the guy who was maybe in charge, or the gal, they're sweeping floors. I mean, they're doing everything you could imagine to make things work, and that's just the way it has to be. And startups are exciting. I've been in 2, post my military career. In fact, even in the military, in the Marine, I was at units that had just stood up. So that's kind of a similar thing too.
No,
And
same. I was the real quick. I'm sorry. I was the
yeah,
number 6 got hired out of the ASOS, so Air Support Operations Squadron. Just what there were acronyms around from the Air Force side. I was the 6th guy in the TAC-P, the JTAC unit up in Pennsylvania. Yeah, so being like the 6th guy into the unit, right? Yeah.
yeah, no, and my first, I was in Okinawa, my first stint in the Marine Corps, and I was with 9th Marines Regiment. I get there, and then little more than midway through, hey, 9th Marines Regiment's going away, so we had to get rid of all of our gear, transfer stuff back to the States, give it to other units, on Okinawa, go through all the admin stuff to roll up the flag. And and then I go from there to my first job, CONUS, which was at in Virginia, and it was at a school that was just merging to be a Marine Corps and Navy school, EWTG LANT, Expeditionary Warfare Training Group LANT. There were 2 separate schoolhouses. For the most part, no one really did anything for that to come together. So I show up, and my job was I all the logistics and money, and yeah, that was crazy. But anyhow, so yeah, so look, I want to go back to a couple things that you talked about, in your military career. So obviously, you just don't get pulled out of thin air for certain things. And it looks like right out of the chute, you were selected to do your thing up there. You were the president, presidential assignment there. You were doing, as you said, Arlington Cemetery funerals. I know stuff like that is tough, and you also did ceremonies at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which I don't recall you mentioned that, but I do recall seeing that on your.
Yeah. Wreath laying ceremonies. Yeah, I've done a few wreath laying ceremonies at the Tomb. Yep.
Right. And, so thank you for that. I spent time on independent duty in the Marine Corps, and a lot of our weeks were just that, supporting funeral details in our region.
Sure.
And we did a lot of them. And, I was, at the time I was Lieutenant Colonel,
Sure.
and there were a couple that I went to present the flag. It's a rank thing for the most part, right?
Yep.
So I had 2 that I did myself, but our Marines and sailors, God bless them, they were in the van, in multiple vans going different places every week, helping with honors for our veterans, and even fallen veterans that were coming back from Afghanistan or Iraq. So thank you for that duty. It's
No, I would. Yeah, Scott, I'll tell you actually when I say a cool story, it's never cool. But so my time in the honor guard, even though it was short, so I was firing party. So I'm 5'10". So for the Air Force, I don't know what it is now, but definitely back then 5'10" was the minimum. So I just beat the minimum. My build, right? I'm a big guy, but I'm not a big guy, right? So the guys that were big were pallbearers. Someone that was my size was probably on firing party. So I was a firing party doing the 20 gun salute. So like my first year, and then I called quite a few of them. And like I actually was, I think it was Tech Sergeant Volsler was a Medal of Honor winner that passed away for the Air Force, and I was on his firing party at Arlington. Yeah, so you do a bunch of those, but you're doing so many a week, especially when you're, again, like the Air Force Honor Guard, right? So you're doing these all week because that's all your job is. My grandfather had passed away during that time frame, and I actually handed the flag off to my grandmother.
Oh, wow.
Stone face, right? And so when I look back on it now, you know, my dad had passed away, my stepfather had passed away. I take back even my time, and this is the 90s, right? This is 91 to 93, right? To date myself, this is 91 to 93. That stuff, even when I iron my clothes, I usually iron my kids' school clothes every day. I iron my clothes because back then, right, you had BDUs.
Okay, Dan, look, I think that you're actually a Marine. Okay, I don't want to hear.
Well, I did. So we had to have.
You're scaring me because it sounds like me.
Look at my hair. We used to have a high end tight, and I mean a skin high end tight every Monday for again the Presidential Honor Guard, like every Monday inspection, high end tight every day. And yeah, I still like I'm like with you, right? Short hair. I can't. If it goes past my glasses, I start to freak out. Like I'm looking like some kind of hippie or who knows, right? And even my beard, like I've shaved my beard off occasionally just for the sheer fact that sometimes I'm just like, oh my God, I can't see my beard. Anyway, though, like doing the honor guard stuff. So I deployed in 2011 to Afghanistan. A couple guys I was doing some ops with had passed away, and we did the ceremonies there in country, you know, at the bigger FOB. We were at FOB Basab, where the brigade was. And so anyway, they're practicing, and I was like, I raised my hand. I was like, hey, I know it's, you know, 2011, but like in the 90s, like I did this like full time, like 24/7. I was like, if you guys could use some help. And they were like, yeah, 100%. So they gave me seven of the guys, you know, from the company, you know, had lost. We had blanks, right? The Army's prepared, and they had blanks. They gave me actually like 2 or 3 days to train them up to do the firing party and everything. And then so I did the ceremonies, and it was funny because remember, it was the brigade, right? Sergeant Major. And he comes walking down the line to shake everyone's hand because it sounded great. And, you know, and it's something that's such honoring, you know, fallen soldiers. And he gets to me, and here I am, and my, you know, Air Force tapes say, you know, Air Force, and I'm wearing my JTAC patch. And he's like, and I was the N2IC, and he's like, why is the Air Force guy in charge of my 7 other arms? But
Hey, there's a reason, right?
Yeah, right. Well, and I was also like, well, I'm the one that was calling in your air power to hopefully prevent this, but you know, that's IEDs and stuff. But yeah, I did that though. And I would tell you this. So to go back for my honor guard days, as we go that story, it was amazing. It's just like how you're so trained, and you've done something for 2 years, and every day for 2 years. And then umpteen year later, it just comes back, and you're able to perform it.
Yes, it does. And yeah, that's, you know, we'll again, thank you. You know, it's not generic, you know, thank you for your service. And then, you know, necking it down to those specific things that you were involved in, because all those things matter. You know, it matters to the people that are there. It matters to you, you know, right here, up here, you know, it's all encompassing the things that we get involved in as folks in the military. And, you know, I see that you were also, you know, when you went into the Guard, you know, post 9/11, you're in the Guard, you're talking about being in the Tactical Air Control Party. You guys are laying down some heavy firepower when needed. And, you know, anyone that's been deployed in a combat zone absolutely understands the power of what that means. And the people that understand it the best are the folks that aren't here any longer, because they were on the receiving end of that.
Right.
And it's incredible. And it's an extremely important job, because you got to know what the heck you're doing. You know, that's kind of an obvious thing, but it's very involved. There's, you know, everything's moving in terms of air, you know, and you know, there are stationary targets, there are moving targets. You know, you got to make sure you're hitting the right target. You know, like we just saw here a couple of weeks ago with drone strikes. Sometimes, you know, mistakes happen. You know, and that job is it's a high vis job, and it's a much needed job for how we project power and fight our battles. So, again, the fact that you did that, to me, it says a lot about, your ability and the things that you did for our country. And as
No.
someone who, was deployed and saw how our air power does what it does, thank you for helping to take care of us guys that are ground guys.
No, it was great. I mean, it's funny. So when you say that though, like I start thinking about even like LinkedIn, right? And as we're talking, because I know what crowd we're talking to, it's the recruiter question, like how do you deal with stress? And you want to tell those stories. Well, being shot at, controlling an A-10 to come in the strafe, or even like, can you tell me a time, in your background where you have coordinated with other, people inside or agencies, and you want to be like, well, I was on a radio, right? And you just, but again, but to equate that to like those kind of questions are usually funny and I think can apply, but yeah, like it takes a lot of coordination for sure.
Yeah. Something, when you said Minot, I'm kind of shifting gears here real quick. When you said Minot, North Dakota,
Yep.
I couldn't help but to want to ask you this question. Did you see any UFOs when you were up there?
No, I would tell you 94 below though. So
Yeah.
wind chill was like 50 below. I mean, no, I think it was 45 was actual temperature, and then wind chill ended up kicking it. It was actually like 94 below. So I've been in 94 below.
Wow. Yeah, that I feel like a wimp now. I was complaining at -20
No,
when I was training up at the Marine Corps cold weather training up in the Sierras, at our school up there.
well, there's different
that was
levels of cold though, right? And
Yeah.
it's even like places like North Dakota and anyone that's listening who's Minnesota and all those kind of stuff. They do the engine blocks. Have you ever
Yes.
seen that?
Yep.
Yeah, right. And you plug it in, and again, this was 90s, and so I would go to the 7-Eleven, and you keep actually we didn't plug it in, but you keep your car running. And I remember my mother being like, "Aren't you afraid the car's gonna get stolen?" You're like, "No." Like, no. Everyone leaves their car running. Like, you're not turning your car off.
Yeah, the cold is a different thing. You can't get away from the cold. At the school I was at, you're out in the field. You're up in the mountain. On the mountain rather, night and day. The daytime is not bad because you're doing things, and the sun comes up. Even if it's snowing, you're still active. Nighttime is brutal. Oh, geez. But
like
that was.
Yeah.
What's that?
Anytime at night, cold or heat, because some people might say, oh, well, I love being hot or cold, but like when it comes to sleeping, right? If it's extreme cold while sleeping or extreme heat, I was on a kayak trip with a nonprofit and it was like 100 degrees and I'm in my little one-man tent on a rock. It was just like the other month. And I was just like, oh my God, it's so hot. So I feel like anytime there's extremes in cold and heat, especially when you're sleeping, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And gut check wise for the Marine Corps, outside of actually being in combat, I think that the cold weather training package up at Bridgeport is probably like, when you look back on it, it was awesome, I mean, even while you're doing it, but when you get through something, when you kind of suffer through something, sometimes you don't see the value of it until you're past it, right? Life's kind of that way. And so that was a tremendous thing. And I was kidding about the UFO thing at Minot, but I do recall seeing a couple of shows where, at some point, I don't recall when it was, but, there's a guy who was a captain in the Air Force. He's talking about, hey, yeah, this thing came over. Sure. And the guys who were doing your job were calling in saying, hey, there's this thing up in the air here. And, all their systems shut down and their missiles went offline and stuff. So I'm sure that those stories are probably still being circulated with folks up there. I just think that's crazy to think what that may have been, but anyhow. Yeah. So that's not part of your story.
I've never had any UFO stories. And I've driven through and I've worked down in Roswell a few times. Yeah, nothing in Roswell either. Yeah.
That's good. Well, so let's talk about you went from the Air Force and then you transitioned for a bit into being a police officer in Maryland. Now you're from Maryland, correct? I think you went to high
Yep,
school
yep,
in Maryland.
yep. Grew
So,
up in the Baltimore County. Yep.
right. So you went into the police department. How much of a transition was that for you becoming a police officer? Was that pretty much of a smooth thing since you did have some, military police background and, of course, things that you had done to that point?
I like to think so now. You never know beforehand. So that's actually, I would tell you, so my story, even when I joined, so again, it's 2000, I went to the academy in January of 2003 for Baltimore. I was on active duty orders, for 9/11, right? So 9/11 happened September. By November, I was on orders down at Andrews Air Force Base. That's where I was with the reserves. And I'm at Andrews and I'm working with a bunch of, men and women that were civilian cops. Cause we had the New Jersey, guard activated Virginia, who were down with us at Andrews. And so, yeah. And again, when you get guard and reserve, you now get people who have full-time jobs. So there were a ton of people who were like DC cops, Jersey's, cops, Virginia state troopers. And, I actually was working at MBNA America. I just got my lending authority and I was a credit analyst, is where I kind of was sitting. Yeah. And so I'm at there and, when 9/11 happened, I remember when they called me up, I was like, all right, great. When do we go? And they're like, well, you're going to Andrews. And I was like, so that's how I ended up going to Raven school. So we were checking IDs, again, a younger guy was in shape. And so I was like, well, let's do something. And so they sent me to Raven school. So that's up in New Jersey. And so that's when you fly. So I did the last year I was there, I did a bunch of missions down to South America, just guarding, again, dating myself, the C-141s that we used to have at Andrews. We're flying down to South America. But anyway, so I'm at Andrews and I'm with all these, civilian cops who are guard and reserve who are activated. And we're talking cop stories and where they're here, I'm hearing all these cop stories. And I was like, that's what I want to do. So during that, about 13 months that I was on active duty orders, I applied to Baltimore. I was like, this is what I want to do. This is like no brainer. And so I applied, got accepted. And then and again, it's timing. When I talk about a lot of things, timing and everything, right when my orders were ending is when the academy started. Right. So yeah.
Hey, Dan, let me ask you a quick question. I saw that somebody had typed in, they wanted to know what Raven School is. Now, I know some people probably think Baltimore Ravens, they think that you went to play football. So if you could elaborate for folks that don't understand what that is.
Yeah, so the Air Force, and you have to excuse me because I'm not really probably current. I'm sure they still have Ravens. So Raven program for the Air Force then, and if they still have it now, you flew with aircraft to act as the security in austere environments. So like Afghanistan, like, a huge example is Kyrgyzstan, like countries like that. You would fly in where an airfield isn't secure, but they're allowing an American aircraft to land, military aircraft to land. You get off, there's at least two of you, and then you provide the security. So when we did South America, like I did Colombia, so I went to Bogota and Cartagena, Brazil, Peru. The airports really weren't again certified, right? To say, hey,
right.
Right. We know we can fly in, but what happens when we get there? Right. Especially like when you talk about, again, back in those days, like for Colombia, for example, the FARC, right? I mean, we were trained in anti-terrorism, like level 2. So we would brief the air crew, like people get kidnapped in Colombia. Right. So this is what we need to do. And you're in charge of all that. Right. Colombia was really bad back then. Like everybody hey, my uncle was kidnapped. So you would give briefings like that. So you brief the air crew, but then you provide the physical security for the air crew. But once you would land, sometimes I think it was it Peru or Bolivia? It was super secure. We were comfortable with the military that was there. We knew it. You made contact. You're like, oh, great. The plane is secure. Our cargo is secure. We're good. We can punch. We can go with the air crew to downtown. And it's secure downtown and stuff like that. But I remember one too. I think it was Peru because the elevation. My partner and I, our oxygen level was like 80%. We started,
wow. Right.
Yeah, we started feeling a bit hypoxic. We called back, right? You're on a sat phone. They were like, yeah, lock the plane up, get downtown. Yeah, they do the test with our oxygen level. We were like 80%.
Oh, geez. Wow, that's dangerous. Yeah. Well, that's one of those that's one of those missions where you're alone and unafraid.
Yeah.
And some of
Yeah.
those places where you're landing, and the whole that whole mission down there, you don't really talk about certain things, right?
Yep.
But yeah, that's
Yeah.
absolutely some dangerous areas down there, and you've got to
Sure.
be your head on a swivel, and
And
so
that's
okay,
what
so
Ravens were. Yeah. So
right,
Ravens were securing the aircraft, protecting the aircrew in austere environments, right? As we'll call it.
right. So getting into what you did in Baltimore now, anyone that pays attention to crime, across the country, probably know that Baltimore is a tough beat. It's a
Yep.
dangerous beat. They've got some high crime and murder statistics. Kind of think Chicago-ish, I guess.
Detroit. Yeah. Detroit and
Yeah,
Baltimore used to always fight for number one, number two for murders. Yeah. For
yeah.
murder. Yeah.
It's something that, again, I keep saying, going back to your profile on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
because it is kind of a treasure trove, if you will. You talk about something that was true in the military, and it was true for your service as a police officer, and as a SWAT member.
Yep.
You talk about the passion for the job, and you talk about the brotherhood of the folks that were on your left or right, that that you would give your life for.
Yep.
And that says a lot, because we believe that. And you made it a point to put that in your profile. That says a lot.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. I would say, I mean, there's guys that are actually still in the team, Zach, Danny, Paul, that I can name that are still even on the Baltimore team. And I just did so many things with them, and it's the same, military, my buddy, Brock, and my best friend Brad, was killed in 2010 in Afghanistan. Yeah. The brotherhood, the bond, especially when it even comes to the police, and it's just the level. Scott, you and I, just so everybody knows too, we talked yesterday just to talk through some things, and we spent a great time. And when I talk about like the transition, like for police officers and just in general, like when you equate being a cop, right, to a soldier, an airman, in the military, these are people that put on a bulletproof vest and a gun every day, right? Now you might say, okay, well, I have my concealed carry, or if you're here in Texas, we can open carry, right? Constitutional. I put my gun on every day, but you don't put a bulletproof vest on every day, and you don't go into a scenario every day. This is someone every day who does things like that. And it's just a level of intensity, and it is, and
Yes.
yeah. And then big cities like Baltimore, I would tell you, like, and I don't want to get on too big of a soapbox, but like there's big cities like Baltimore you don't even ride with a partner. If you're a patrol kid, right? I say patrol kid because I'm the old guy, right? But like they don't ride with partners. And so you're in a single car. So you are alone and afraid, right? You're not afraid, but you're in a car.
Right.
Right?
Bit of a pucker factor there.
Yeah. And if you're doing stuff, usually, you have a squad and a team, and they're in their car too. And, you do all backups, but by definition, it's you in your car, so, I mean, there's a lot to that. And I want to make sure, and that's, again, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, right, I'm sure there's LinkedIn gurus who would argue my point, and there's bullet points you should have. And I think mine reads more like a story, right?
Right. Yeah, it does.
I like mine to be, I like mine to be like a story. Yeah.
Well, so, about your story, another thing that we talked about was that, pardon me, that, and I want to say something real quick before I forget. Sarah, under the power of her story, she has different groups that, she kind of rides herd over and, facilitates and gives a platform to. First responders are big in this umbrella thing we got going on here. And I'm going to ask for Sarah. I think it would be great if you have the time at some point to come on and talk about, police, type stuff, your experience, that maybe you can provide some insight and some help for folks that or first responders, whether they're firefighters, police officers, paramedics, or whatever. So without getting too far into that, if if you're good with it, I'm sure Sarah would love to have you on one of her different programs at another time, because the value that you'll bring is huge. So.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. My wife would roll her eyes. So when you are a cop, even like when you're in the military, you tell a lot of stories, right? You're like, I thought we were on date night, and you usually run into team members. You're like, yeah, and it becomes a lot of stories. But I am super passionate. Yeah, like I said, even though it might have been 7 years, again, when I talk about Black Rifle, a city like Baltimore is right. It's the 8th largest police, or at least it was, at least the 8th largest police department in the country. Those 7 years were span, somewhere else a lot.
Right.
And
Well,
I loved it. I used to eat, I would say real quick, I used to eat when I was a patrol kid, I would eat my Subway sub like on the stoop of like townhomes and again, if you're familiar with Baltimore, like there's streets that are like vacant, like they're boarded up. And I would
right.
sit in the middle, and I worked in the Eastern District of Baltimore. So if you want to look up like Greenmount Avenue and North Avenue in Baltimore, I would sit on stoops and houses and eat my Subway just so I would be right.
Yeah,
Like,
community policing, right?
Yeah, this is where the city is paying me to enforce law, right? I got to be here. Great, I know, I get it. I didn't grow up there, right? I grew up, miles away and went to a private school, but this is where I knew I had to do my job, and I wanted to do it, and I did it with my passion, and I did it with passion, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to go and not be, and so I love it. I have a ton of stories. I love those.
I can imagine, and your passion is obvious. Obviously it's obvious why we're talking, but it's also that way in your LinkedIn, actions. And we'll talk about that here in a bit, but something you and I did share on our call the other day, which again was a great call. We spoke for almost an hour. That time just went by so quick, but, you said something that I've heard before, and so I want to bring it up because obviously, if you're saying it, and I've heard other people say it, there's some truth to it, and that's police officers when they transition, and say even folks in the fire department, and there's no transition system established for them. When you leave, you're on your own, and you got to figure things out. And as much as people complain about how crappy the transition system is, for the military, now it absolutely has gotten better. I mean, I transitioned in 2012, and what I know about what they're doing now, it's heads and above better than what it was.
Skillbridge, right? That Skillbridge program.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And other, there are other programs too that, there are folks that are doing great things to help folks kind of get their mind shifted before they leave, give them opportunities to build skills and to, come on and work with companies alongside before they actually get out, so it gives them options. And so, it's tremendous, but it's kind of a tragedy that there's not something set up for folks that serve in that capacity, because like you were talking about, I say this quite often when I talk about, police, especially in the military, you do dangerous stuff, right? Not everybody, it depends on what your job is. You can get hurt or killed in training. You can certainly, the same can happen when you're in combat, but you're not doing what you said every day. You're not donning
every day
your flak jacket. You're not holstering your weapon and going out, because you leave and your wife or husband doesn't know if you'll be back. Now you can't live in that every damn day, right? Because it'll drive you crazy, but it's out there. It's running in the background. And, my grandfather was a Marine. He was also a firefighter for 30 plus years. And when he passed away, I spoke at his funeral, and boy, he was in his 80s, but every guy that was alive that knew him in the fire department was there, all these old timers. And, God bless those guys. They were tight. I loved my grandfather. Had good stories with the Marine Corps, but his stories as a firefighter were just as good. He was a good storyteller. But man, it's just, the love and the passion that those guys and gals have for each other, the things that they see that they can't unsee, there's a lot to unpack there, as they say, but
Scott, I'll tell you, when I left, so when I left Baltimore in 2010, October 2010, and then I deployed, what was it, like, I don't know, April of 11 or something like that, May of 2011. I was absolutely prepared for Afghanistan. So while I wasn't necessarily getting attacked every day, right, while I was in Baltimore, the things like exactly that you were saying that I have seen and done, and I put myself in not only for SWAT, for narcotics, and even patrol. Like I walked in, when I say I walked in, like I walked into Afghanistan being like, this is Baltimore at 2 a.m. in the Eastern District. Bring it.
Right. Wow.
like I've been there. Like, what do you got? Like, going through, I mean, my narcotics team that I worked with, the Violent Crime Impact Division, we were doing like a search warrant a week, and again, if you're walking into someone's house, unexpected, right? And it's a drug neighborhood or, drug house, at least alleged, right? They're not happy to see you. Yeah. So when I deployed, there were, again, not that I walked in with a swagger, but I definitely walked in, again, like anyone, like in any of your military or career, I walked in with okay, I've been there, I've done that. I should know what to expect. I've been trained enough. Like let's go. Like let's.
Right. And there's power to that, right? Because you don't go into situations knowingly unprepared.
Yeah.
I mean, life happens
every day was
and you react, but right. No, yeah.
Every day was a Super Bowl, right? You're like, all right, I made it through the Super Bowl. Let's go. Like, I'm here. Like, I made it here. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, your work as a police officer, and you were on the SWAT team. Again, you've got a lot of stories there, but now what I want to do is transition into your transition post service. Being the police officer and a member of the Guard, because you're retired now as the Guard. So your transition, I'm sure, is a very interesting story, because not only were you trying to figure out, well, who am I now that I'm not all this high speed stuff? I'm not high speed Dan, and I'm passionate, and I want to put my passion somewhere. And oh, by the way, my wife is, she's in the military. Yep. So I'm a mil spouse now. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Yep. Fill us in right there.
Yeah, no, and we talked about that, and that's where I would always, yesterday when we talked, I would be careful, because I probably at age 50 still don't know who I want to be or what I want to do when I grow up. But I do know, again, though, like you said, like I'm not doing adrenaline rush stuff too, right? Like, and not everyone wants to do it. I mean, combat, you're not, again, Baltimore City. I mean, anyway, but I think a company with Black Rifle, so Bethany is my wife. So when she took the orders here, I was, again, I was at an aviation company in Oklahoma City, working directly for the CEO, right? Super successful job. This was going great. I'm going to board meetings. The CEO, Daryl sent me to London. I went to London and met with, owners, blah, blah, blah. But when she took these orders here, I think this is where we really talk about my transition. I think that's really where my transition took phase, because again, I see all the advice you see on LinkedIn and stuff. And I was like, Black Rifle, Yeti, Grunt Style, those companies will pick me up like that. Like, they're all here in the Central Texas area by San Antonio. Oh my God, too easy. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. But again, I fell back, right? I mean, just me being me, I fell back. I was doing some contract work with a simulator company, but I was using my prior JTAC experience, helping out a company, giving them just guidance on some, military aspects, some JTAC simulator things. And that was great, right? I mean, I was working from home. This is what is this, 19? So it's way pre-COVID, right? So, but I really didn't want to work from home. And so I had been looking on Indeed. I'd like to say some of my friends job searching. I wouldn't say job searching, because that makes it sound like I'm job searching. I like looking at jobs because I like reading job descriptions. I like seeing other companies, and you just get a broader vision, right? Doesn't mean you're leaving. Like, I'm not leaving. And so anyway, and this goes back. So this is even then. So I'd been on Indeed and I'm looking, and I saw the ad came up for Black Rifle. And again, that was one of my companies that I had on my list. And it read, they wanted the transitioning 03 that used to be a general's aide. That's literally what the job description read.
That's
So
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, so I like to call it my LinkedIn success story. So I was connected with our prior COO, Scott Harvey, and so Scott and I, we were just connected, right? You're connected with people on LinkedIn. It doesn't mean you're friends with or met them in person.
Sure.
And so, but I had messaged them, and I was like, "Hey, how about a Combat E7, right? Who did this job, but for aviation, CEO, company CEO."
A master, not a master's degree. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Well, that sparked it a little bit, and I got an interview, and then I actually was hired a week later. Now working for the company
Nice.
under Evan and everybody I know, like hindsight 2020, it was networking a little bit, but also with timing, right? So we talk about timing. Just because a job is open now and you don't get that job doesn't mean, in a month something else might open and they know you and you get hired or something for that. So my time there was it was timing for sure, and I got in. Did they take a risk on me? 100%. Nicole Buck is our senior recruiter for the company. Nicole and I are friends, and I was like, Nicole, we make jokes. I was like, not a chance in this world. If we would have had a dedicated recruiting team, I probably would have made that based upon my resume, right? I don't think my diverse story, my personality, some things that I could show, and that's there. But even the risk that to get into, right? And so again, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, I'll kind of tell you, and again, radical transparency, we were going with laughter, is I like to say that I was the hand. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, that's how I used to explain my early role, because people would say, well, what do you do? And I go, are you a Game of Thrones fan? And they would say, yeah. And I go, I'm the hand. And they were like, I got it. I know exactly what you do. But
well, you're touching on some very, important nuggets, if you will, right?
Yeah.
In the transition, you're talking about being connected, having a network.
Yep.
And, quite frankly, not everyone that you're connected with becomes a friend, but certainly there are folks that you become friends with because you're paying attention to what they're doing. You're chatting on each other's posts. You're talking on DMs. When you travel to their city, you probably make it a point to meet up with them, have some coffee or, have a beer or whatever, so creating that network is so powerful because you never know, right? You never know when you may need someone in your network, not just necessarily for a job, but to bounce something off of work related, or maybe you're going through something that's, stressful, or, maybe you think, well, this person, I have confidence that they're going to probably listen to what I say and give me an honest assessment on what it is I should do or whatever. So, building that network, there's a lot to that. But then also interviewing is something that you don't do, right, in the military, unless you're going for a special job, so to speak, and you'll be interviewed. But for the most part, when you get orders, you show up and you start working. So trying to figure out, what is a resume? How do I write it? What does it need to say? That's all a huge learning curve. And then getting in front of the folks that hire is a whole nother thing that's different, because you have to be able to communicate your story in a way that they're going to understand. And if you're passionate about something, sometimes that's very difficult when you're passionate, because I'm very passionate too. And, I try my best to communicate well, and sometimes you make mistakes in communicating. And, like, for example, a buddy of mine, real quick today, he probably should have DM'd me, but it's cool. He put it out there saying, hey, the date on your on your advertisement for today's call is wrong. It says 30 October. And it's like, hey, it sure does. But it looks nice though, right? It's a good looking ad. But so I went and changed it, and I, gave him props for, hey, thanks for pointing that out.
Right.
But at any rate, so yeah, there's things that when you're in the transition, you're learning. And when you are learning and you have the right folks on your team, folks that transition, you got to know that, because that makes a difference in ultimately getting to where you're going. Other people help you.
Oh yeah. And I would say, like, my resume probably right now, if you looked at it, like, first of all, because you always have one ready, I'm sure it's horrible. And my wife would tell you that, like, when I was transitioning, when I was in the Guard, getting off full time and stuff, and then even like when we moved down, I love interviewing, and she hates it, right? Because I love conversations. And that's exactly how I usually treat them. Now, you obviously have to be professional, but when I give advice, especially because for her, for doing full-time guard, she has to stay on orders. And so she's done a few interviews to get different spots.
Sure.
And it's conversational, right? Let's make it conversational, right? You keep it professional, like they're in charge. I go, but you also need something from them too, so to find things out. Like it's a conversation. Like and that's where I feel like a lot of people, they do, like they try to, and preparing is great. Don't get me wrong, prepare, right? Do your research, but don't have, like, I have a notebook down here, Scott, like if there's any questions, and I was going to have to write them down, but I'm not looking down to be like, tell me your strengths and weaknesses. And I'd be like, my strength is that I am a great communicator,
Right.
You should know yourself well enough to where, even if it's an oddball question, right? Like there's situational questions. Can you tell me a time when, and you're like, and even you have to think about it, like, I don't know if there's a time when I've had that in my life, but like, well, you could relate it to something, right? A skill set that you had, even if that hasn't happened. Yeah. I love interviewing. This conversations. And that's where a lot of even interviews are just that, even nowadays. Again, recruiters and HR people will probably beat me up, but I think a lot of even initial interviews and just even conversations are that, though. They're just informational, right?
Right. And it's designed to, is there a connection there? Is this person likable? They're looking for certain things when they're having that initial interview. Do you pass the sniff test, I guess, probably is a way to say that. So I know a lot of folks that are interested in your story are probably dying to want to hear more about, what you're doing now at Black Rifle, because that is such a cool organization. I myself have been, looking at what you guys do, the makeup of the people that are there, their story, the marketing that you guys do is phenomenal. I'm like, when you see it, you're almost addicted to it. You want to keep checking out, what are they doing now? The outdoor part of this, the military veteran part of this. I know you shared with me the other day when we were chatting about, they have a internal goal for hiring veterans, and it's a high number. It's a really high number, and I that says a lot about them. That's who they are, but they're being true to who they are. So what can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Scott. No, Evan went on Fox, CNN. I forget which one it was, and it was probably, I think, 2017. Again, don't quote me the year, but it was. And again, there was. We'll just say, just for lack of better words, there was another coffee company that said, "Hey, we'll hire 10,000 refugees." Evan went on.
I remember that.
Yep, Evan went on, and he said, "You know what? I'll hire 10,000 veterans." And well, that's a lofty goal. So again, just roughly, we're at roughly 600 employees, over, when I say 3 locations, 3 major locations, but now we have coffee shops. Out of that, though, we're at about 50% veteran hire, right? Well, okay, so Dan, if you're saying 600, and then we'll just do rough math, 50% is 300. 300 is a long way from 10,000. But that 10,000 goal, for Evan and Matt and the whole team, JT, is still there, right?
Right.
He didn't say, I'm going to have 10,000, but by 2021, he just said, I'll hire 10,000. And it very much is. Evan's time, in the Army, and again, and hiring someone like me, my time in the Air Force, it's real. And if I don't know if Nicole will listen to this, all right, she's our senior recruiter, so she's not a veteran, but Nicole is very obviously patriot and veteran friendly, right? And she knows she works inside of a company that is heavy with that. And so Nicole knows, as a revision, like, I need to hire veterans. And I've had questions like, well, do you hire outside veterans? Well, obviously we do, if we're only at 50%. So it really does become also the premise of the best qualified, right?
Sure.
But when we look at the best qualified, the federal government does it too, right? At least they used to, right? You get like 10 or 15 points preference. So we don't, and I would tell you again, radical transparency, we don't have a point system. Like, there's no point system, but it is very much, though, so social media, right? So, and we talked about this yesterday. We're a coffee company first and foremost, but we also are probably second a media company between Coffee or Die or digital magazine for any
Right.
digital magazine, right? All the YouTube videos and you know, Instagram and Facebook, you know, that we do. We also are very much our media company. So say you are someone that worked public affairs or something, or combat camera, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go work media for Black Rifle. Being a veteran working in combat camera, yeah, it's going to get you, yes, it is. It's going to get you a little bit of a bump over maybe, you know, someone who just was, you know, a photographer and it wasn't inside. But you still have to be able to, again, like you have to be able to translate your story, right? What is going to make you the best? And because again, while we created a nonprofit side of Black Rifle, Black Rifle, the company is, you know, a profit company. So you have to be able to have, again, the experience that you're doing it to be able to generate revenue, right? But for sure though, like your military background, you always want to be, you know, like, hey, hire that person. You know, but sometimes, you know, and there's a lot of guys, you know, again, we talk about LinkedIn, you know, I don't want to name off name, but there's a lot of people who I know have applied who are great friends of mine, again, on LinkedIn, who haven't gotten positions, right? It's timing. It's just, you know, Black Rifle probably gets, and again, I might be lowballing it, maybe I'm highballing, I don't know, maybe gets like 200 applicants like per, right? We don't have an ATS system. So a lot of people, it's the, what is it? The automated.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't have an automated one. LtCol and Teresa's our director of talent acquisition. And then LtCol, there's a team. I mean, they're looking through them, you know, and I actually have access to some of the system that we have, you know, and I can look, you know, a bunch of the directors and managers can look at those. And like I said, I don't want to give too much specific advice, but I tell you, just really got keywords. But being a vet though, it is important to Black Rifle.
Well, Dan, to some of what you're saying there.
I guess my soapbox.
Oh, well, no, not at all. You know, it's the comment made, you know, we're going to hire 10,000.
Yep.
You know, that's inspirational.
Yep.
And he set a benchmark. He set a goal. You know, that way everyone in the organization understands, hey, that's part of our mission. We're going to hire veterans. So the folks on the team, you know, okay, hey, you know, their antennas up, they know that. So they're looking for the best qualified, just like anyone else is, you know, and the other organization's a behemoth, right? You know, you guys were still relatively, you know, young in the cycle. But it was a courageous thing to say, but they're also putting their money where their mouth is, and they're doing it, you know, and it does take time. Timing is everything in life. You know, it's a key part of how things happen. You know, timing is huge.
No, and it's even when I say we, Evan and the company, we created a nonprofit. So we actually have a nonprofit called the BRCC Fund. It's not the most original name. Evan will punch me for that. But it's called, right. But we are, Evan and the company with the nonprofit are giving away, like just for our Layton grand opening, we Torn Warriors and Live Like Sam. You know, we gave two $5,000 checks away.
Wow.
Yeah, one was from the company and then one was from the fund. And so the fund's goal under Jay right now is like, you know, Evan's visions, we call it Commander's Intent, right? So Black Rifle, that's the thing though. If you're a veteran, you get on, man, terms are outlet, like I do op boards, I do warnos, right? Oh, it's
nice.
No, it's 100%. And so, so when you look at that though, like we're able to give other, like, so again, Commander's Intent was I was going. So Evan will usually say, hey, my Commander's Intent is this. And so and it's, you know, I want to give, you know, money away to other veteran, either other veteran nonprofits or other veteran companies. And so when we do these grand openings and stuff, it's all slotted around. Yeah, I would, and again, radical transparency. I mean, there were some in the company, probably in our finance section. Those guys, if they're listening, will hate me.
Well, that's what those guys do, right?
Yeah, well, creating a nonprofit's
They've got a specific mission.
Yeah, creating a nonprofit's not easy, right?
No, it's not.
And so when I say it was, some were like, don't do that. Like it's more of a headache. And Evan, right, and Tom and the executive staff were like, no, I need you to make it happen because it's what we're doing and because of the goal that we're giving back to. Exactly. Right. And so,
yeah, they've got a vision there and they're executing their vision. Yeah. And you know, they do it so smartly. And I know that, you know, you're obviously part of of what they do. And, from someone outside looking in, when you're on the outside, things always look, if you're doing it right, things always look seamless, right?
Oh, sure. Oh, yeah, yeah.
But,
So people, real quick, Scott, people are like, oh my God, your job's so fun. Your job's so awesome. Yes. But make no mistake, right? I get calls at 6:30 a.m. Like I'm on 24/7, right? And so yeah.
Yeah, they're only seeing the pictures that you post on LinkedIn when you're on a kayak somewhere, out in the wilderness, loving life. With you have your coffee with you,
Right.
all those cool things you
Yeah.
do. I mean, that's if someone doesn't like you just based on that, then you don't need to be connected with them.
Yeah. But I tell you, I think I said it in one of my LinkedIn posts. It was just that though. It's just like, you don't see, like, again, for the grand opening that I had to wake up at 2 a.m. So I was make sure I was at the store by like 3:30. Right.
Right.
And then so that's a 12-hour day. And right. And there's guys, right. Oh, I get it. 12-hour day is so hard. I mean, I get it. Right. But make no mistake. Like, again, I'm not showing that I was up at, 2 o'clock in the morning. Right. Like, cause that's not fun.
Yeah. No, and that's where your passion comes into play, right? Doing that, you have to love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because of what you have to do to make it work.
No,
if you're hating life,
Yeah.
it's going to come across as, hey, this sucks. But when you really love what you do, I mean, even if you're getting up early or you have these long hours, when the rubber meets the road, the optics there, if you love your job, people can see that.
Yeah. Well, it's authentic, right?
Yes.
When I got there, Kayla was a manager with me. When Kayla and I got there, I think we got there at 3:30. When we get there at 3:30 a.m., like, yeah, like you can't turn on a smile. Well, I guess you can if you're a great actor, but I'm not a great actor. So like when I got there at 3:30, it's just like game one. And there were 50 or 100 people in line already, right? And you have to be able to engage because again, it's the experience. And this is where Black Rifle and I would say any successful company, just I don't want to hammer Black Rifle, but it's authentic. It's what your brand is. And and the people that just stood in line who got there at midnight, right, to get a free mug, what am I giving them? And same thing for Black Rifle. We have coffee club members or subscriptions. So any subscription company, right? What is the value that I am giving to these people, right? And it's got to be good, right? We all make
absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So we all make hard, like, and how am I going to get that? And so the team, again, with Black Rifle or whatever subscription company you work at, is what is that team? Like, how is that team daily waking up with a passion to say, how am I providing value to those people who are giving me their money to be in this club? Yeah. And that's what we do. And for sure, like when
and you guys do that so well, I mean, again, because when you look at it, it's, at least for me, it hits on every segment of, oh my God, this is an awesome company. They've got an awesome, brand.
Yeah.
They've got a quality brand. But like you said, you guys are also, of course, you're doing apparel as well. And there's all kinds of stuff with apparel. And then there's coffee, there's the mugs. There's the media side of the house. You guys are in a lot of different segments.
It is.
And it all looks very professional. It's being done very well.
That's great to hear. There's definitely, I think, days where I bet some of us are probably like, are we still operating out of our garage, right? Because Evan, again, 7 years ago was carrying an SBR doing it out of his garage. But we are, though. I think that the team that's in place, the processes that we now finally have between the executive staff, like Matt and Evan, the brand, JT, and those guys, giving down some of that vision. Molly Schweikert. Molly is our VP of marketing, which she's doing with the marketing. So our marketing team is separate than our content team. So Logan Stark is in charge of like all of our branding and media and stuff. And then Molly, when they're all on cylinders, again, I won't give out any numbers, but just even for our National Coffee Day, we had a great day yesterday, right? As a company. But I think it's, again, though, but it's the value we added, though. To the company. I mean, and when we talk about the give back, even hiring veterans or giving money back to veterans, I'm not sitting here going, oh, we had a great day. Great. Dan's getting a big old fat bonus. No, that money, and it's what I'm saying, you either have, and I won't get into politics again, we talked about politics, but you have extreme left and you have extreme right. Why aren't you doing this or why aren't you doing that? The end goal is we are literally, the money we're receiving in for a profit company, we're giving back out. I mean, you obviously can't give 100% out because, again, Evan, to think of Evan as the commander, right? Like he's the general, right? He has 600 plus mortgages he has to worry about, right? I have a mortgage in my house that I'm in, right? I got 600 of those. So he has to worry about those. So we have to make sure that we're doing that. But I can definitely attest. And again, it's my soapbox. We are for sure, between everything we're doing, that vision is unwavering. And that's the thing for first responders, too, like we can harp on the military, but when we go back to, when we're talking about first responders, police, I can tell you, like the San Antonio Police Department is hooked up with Black Rifle, just because it's local, it's easy, right?
Sure.
So those guys are loving it, but we do buy a bag, give a bags for law enforcement and fire department too, right? But that's where I tell you, I'm not being salesy for Black Rifle, but like even our 5-alarm bag, like we redesigned a bunch of our bags, and our 5-alarm bag is our fire department kind of bag, right? And it's a cool with a on it and stuff like that. And it's just we do that for a reason. And again, it's just not just a black or brown bag, coffee. It's got a design to it. It actually could strike a chord in somebody.
Yeah. And that's smart. I mean, that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so, hey, just for the interest of time, I see
where are we at? Are we at an hour? Yeah.
Yeah, we're just over an hour here.
It's like a Joe Rogan show. We can probably keep going for 3.
Well, yeah. You know what? When you get good folks on, we've been blessed with the folks that have come on the show. It's never you're just sitting here with dead space. Last week's show was a crazy show. I brought 3 folks on with Angels 14. You'll have to see that. That is entertaining, but there's also a lot of good stuff that was discussed. But
hopefully people do though. Scott, I'm not a big I don't do a lot of podcasts. So we have our own podcast too and stuff. God, I don't know. I guess I don't know. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts? I mean, I know you're doing, but like,
well, I listen to some, I do so for a couple. One, if it interests me, then I'm going to listen to it, right? But I also listen to see, well, what are other folks doing? Because you have to look at the folks that are successful. Yeah. And then you emulate where you can, not that you're copying, but you take the good and then you see maybe what not to do as well. It's just kind of a smart way to, maybe make your show a little better. Yeah. But, so in the interest of time here, we could, again, we can talk probably a couple hours, but just trying to neck this down, I do want to give the opportunity for, folks that are still here. Sarah, how many folks do we currently have that are still with us?
We have Chris Norris and Chris Gregorio.
Okay. Well, do either of the Chris's want to ask any questions here in the final moments?
Do you guys have any questions? There's Chris Norris.
Hey, what's up? It's Chris Norris. Yeah, so I'm right in the middle of transitioning. I just flew in from Japan. I'm in Bangor, Washington right now. So I'm out processing at the transient personnel unit, and hopefully that will only take about 15 days, depending on the government shuts down. But
hey, Chris, real quick, did you post this morning that you were back in the same time zone with Vaughn? Okay.
Yeah, that's me, man.
Yeah, that started to ring a bell here. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I think a transitional question I would say is like, what is one of the biggest things that you miss about being active duty? And then were you able to find a way to fulfill that void that was left when you left active duty?
Yeah. I mean, Scott, if Chris, if you're asking me, I would tell you again, radical transparency is I keep making that joke, but it's one of our mission statements, but it's true. I would tell you the camaraderie is when I first transitioned. And so, like I said, when I cheated, I did defense contracting. So I was bunched around of other people who were ex-military, right? So that's cheating. Working at Black Rifle, while I say it's not cheating, I definitely targeted friendly military companies. And when I say, like we write op words, I mean, I'm on my MacBook. I could show you that Evan will have me write like a 5 Ws. I'll have me write an op word. I can use the term Warno. you know, and things like that. And I do have our camaraderie, and that's why, again, the company like Black Rifle is just that, though, is because, again, maybe it's not the best to say, but I would tell you, I mean, I can drop F-bombs, right? And I can drop F-bombs around my people and culture company. And people would say, well, profanity is not great. I get it. If you're in the military, I bet it was. I can be,
yeah, it's the way things roll. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can be myself, you know, a little bit. We don't have a dress code here. So I used to, when I say used to, we're renovating our San Antonio office, but Thursdays, right? So I used to call Thursday Tactical Thursday. So I used to come in my Cry Precision multicam pants that I got issued, right? 2011, it still fit me. Yeah, and I call it Tactical Thursdays. So I think is trying to find that camaraderie, because I mean, there's companies like USAA, right? I know a lot of vets that work over there, and they seem to be great for veterans. And so it's just really trying to find maybe a veteran company that's going to fit your lifestyle. Again, I ended my career, as I would say, when I retired as a TAC P. So I was definitely coming from a combat environment, which isn't easy, you know, especially if you're infantry and things like that, right? And when I say it's not easy, I mean, and even being a cop, right? It comes from things like, you know, being able to talk about a story of seeing a dead body, right? Blah, blah, you know, what combat and just what that kind of level brings, you know, and so it really is just trying to find that fit, because I can't imagine, like, say I went and worked, I don't know why this popped into my head. I kind of was looking around. Say I went and worked for Ashley Furniture. I don't know anyone at Ashley Furniture, but I know I have bought things from the company called Ashley Furniture. I don't know if I'd fit in there, right? I don't know what their culture's like. And I can only imagine if I applied to be like an operations manager and I got over there, and you talk about knife handing somebody, right? If I started knife handing somebody, you know, or, you know, just even, you know, Kayla, again, is someone that I supervise, and a friend of mine. Kayla, she's prior Army, and, you know, I'm able to FaceTime with her, and hypothetically, if I'm on the toilet or if she's on the toilet and she answers her phone, military people will get that and they'll do that, right? Probably. Non-military people probably wouldn't. Phone, maybe with that happening. So I don't know. I mean, does that help, Chris? I mean, was that an answer, or?
Yeah, it's good to go, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. So like, those are the things I think about, is like connection, purpose, and challenge are like the three big things that like kind of like hold me together. And then I kind of start tripping out a little bit if I think about, you know, I don't want to become one of those statistics of guys that gets out and then loses.
Yeah, hey guys,
stuff
excuse me
and
one
goes
second.
south.
I've got something that I've got to attend to real quick. If you guys can
Yes, go ahead, Chris. If Chris, you want to unmute? Yeah. So Chris, I would tell you real quick. Like Logan, and again, radical transparency. I would tell you, Logan Stark, right? Logan was a Marine sniper, and now he's, you know, been with the company and an owner. Logan and I used to say early on, if you had to look around with you and maybe pick like 4 people that you would want to be in a firefight with, who would you pick? And when dependent, like, again, and I'm using Ashley Furniture, I don't even know why. And I bet they're a great company. Like, and I love their furniture. I bought furniture from them. But like, if I were at a company where I didn't maybe know they have a heavy military presence, and you're like, you have to pick what people you'd want to be in a firefight with you. Like, that's a tough question. And that was even a tough question in a company that's 50% veterans. But that's what I think, again, when I look at it, especially people that I pick, that I know that I want to be on my team, we come down to sometimes it's like, hey, who I don't want to be in a firefight with. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.
Yeah, Dan, one question. And Chris
Chris,
Norris, if I may say, I think that for me, this is part of my transition is make sure you find part of that club, man. Because what we're missing, I think, out of the military or police work, once you step out of that, you're no longer part of the club. And you may be happy and move on to your next thing, but now you don't have that family, that tribe, that club. And Dan, and I'm probably gonna have to go here after I ask this question. We're in active shooter training, but thanks, buddy.
Hates you? What do you do?
Magazines. Being that you're as successful as you are in your transition, looking back, what would you have done differently to make that transition quicker for you without having that gap? And on that, our lights are on. I've got to go, and I'll watch the recording back. Thank you for your time, Dan.
Yeah, Chris. Hey, so to answer Chris's question, what I would say that I would do is I'd probably use LinkedIn more now that I know how to use it more. Again, I don't get paid by LinkedIn, and I'm not a LinkedIn top influencer, and I use my super air quotes with my hands all over the place. Man, I would use that platform more, and crap, I'd even say even like Instagram. I mean, Instagram, that's the two that I'm on. I don't think that Instagram, I mean, Instagram, you can DM somebody. And so if you make a connection with them, I really think making networking, like I used my networking for people that I knew. So like when I said when I was contracting in Afghanistan and I didn't want to contract in Afghanistan anymore, and I came back, it's because, you know, my friend Stan was a VP of the aviation company that I worked with. And I was like, hey, Stan, like, do you have, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to be, and he did. Right. And so I networked there. The way social media is now between a platform like LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, I would, again, if the other Chris, right, if he watches this, like that's what I would do. And again, we really didn't have it then per se, like we did, but we didn't. I would use those platforms more and more to try to make those connections. But I would tell you, even someone that uses LinkedIn, now about making connections and everything, it can be difficult, right? Because I'm sure there's people out there that would call BS on me, be like, oh, I've sent you a message. Problem is you can't sell. Like I can't make a connection and then be like, oh, hey, Dan, by the way, like I'm trying to sell XYZ pipe. Like, it's got to be something, Scott, you and I talked about Michael Quinn. So Michael Quinn is kind of, someone that, I follow on LinkedIn and everything. And for Michael, like I was able to shoot him a DM and then he was like, hey, call me. And then we were able to talk. So I think you got to, again, like anything, you have to make it authentic. You got to make that connection. And so that networking, it's got to be authentic and connected.
No, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
hey guys, sorry, I had to, I live out in the country.
It's life.
Yeah, I live out in the country, and my big dog, I usually let him in when I have these shows, but I forgot, and we have coyotes out here, and he actually attacks coyotes.
Where
and what's that?
Are you able to say, like, I don't know if you're hidden somewhere, but where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Southern California. I live on a ranch. I've got a couple acres, and so anyhow, he's a mix of a Ridgeback, and they think it might be a pit bull, but he's chill with everything other than coyotes, because he got attacked when he was little, and now it's payback whenever he sees them. And I caught him scaling. I mean, I heard him because he starts going off, but I caught him scaling the fence.
Yeah.
So I had to calm him down and then bring him inside. Yeah. But yeah, so he's a good boy, but he's not friendly with coyotes. But so hey, but before
are there any questions too? I saw a chat, like I see a number down there. Are there any questions too that were just punched in that we didn't hit or we need to hit, or Scott, or I didn't want to?
Yeah, Sarah will check this.
Yeah, I don't know if
I think they were actually networking. Chris was inviting Chris Norris because they actually live right next to each other, which is cool.
Yeah, and he's just south of me, so we're gonna link up for coffee. So yeah, cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would add
back or just comment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. Thanks for looking at that. Chris Norris. I would to your question, I would add a couple things as well, because that's a good question. And I talk about that a lot personally, but then also with other veterans is when you leave service, not everyone knows what they're going to do. Even if you've had time to plan, you still might not know exactly what it is you want to do. And staying connected is huge. Try your best to stay connected to the folks that you care about, that you served with, be purposeful with that. But the other thing is you're not going to be able to see them every day, right? Because you're in a different life. So now you need to reach out to other folks, and LinkedIn is a great way of doing that. And you're going to have to figure out, okay, I'm going to do X. So if I use LinkedIn effectively, I know that I need to connect with folks in that industry, and you can connect with them. You can ask questions about what they're doing. And like Dan said, it's all about being authentic. you don't connect and then start asking for favors, right? You have to build that relationship. And I think we're probably all old enough to understand, it's all about building relationships. So not to beat that one into the deck, but it's true.
Yep.
So you're building these relationships, even though it's not face to face. That's what we do nowadays. So we have this tool. We have to understand, what it's about, how to use it. But aside from, the industry piece and connecting with what you want to do that way, connecting with veterans groups, whether it's with, organizations like Vietnam or not, excuse me. Oh, geez, I'm drawing a blank here.
VFW.
VFW.
Yeah.
Thank you. American Legion, or just groups of veterans that get together, like folks that Sarah talks with, folks that I talk with, Angels 14, finding, okay, where are these tribes? Who's in them? What do they talk about? And you'll find a space in that too. And the folks that are on these calls are just like us, right? They're everyday Americans. They serve their country. They're looking for that connection, that camaraderie that you're going to miss. And don't underestimate that. I think people underestimate it, and then they can even get into kind of a lull with, oh, geez, maybe I shouldn't have gotten out of the military because things are just so much different, and they're going to be different. And you got to get past that. But a way to kind of help bridge the gap is finding those folks that are going through that, folks that have gone through that, because they could lend advice. They can, give you their stories that can help inspire you when you start to feel the way that you might feel. It's like, okay, other folks have had that same thing. So that's a great question. And, being proactive in that regard, and that's, it's like Herb Thompson. If you're familiar with Herb Thompson on LinkedIn, he says, own your journey. Well, that's a big part of owning your journey, is understanding that and working that to help keep yourself right up here, but then right here, because a lot of that's right here, because it's hard you're not going to replace what you're leaving when it comes to the camaraderie. But if you do what Dan's done, you're fortunate enough to find a tribe that is actually work too, so he has the best of both worlds, which is a great story for him.
Yeah. Well, it's hobbies too. So not only the company, but hobbies that, again, Black Rifle has put me into these hobbies, but I didn't shoot archery prior to 2 years ago, and now I'm a huge fan of shooting. It's called the Total Archery Challenge, right? You shoot these 3D targets, so I've been to Colorado and Big Sky and Utah, and you hike 4 or 6 miles, through, and you're shooting these, targets, and it's companies like PSE. So I shoot a PSE bow, right? And there's Matthews and Bear, right? There's a ton of other companies, and I shoot a PSE, but like you go out, and these hobbies are fulfilling though, because there's nothing like hiking like 4 to 6 miles through, Big Sky, Montana, through the mountains, shooting these targets and everything. Kayaking, right? So I've done kayaking down the Devil's River, right? I mean, so getting hobbies too, that are hobbies maybe with other veterans. So maybe your company isn't a company that's, huge veteran, like a Black Rifle, but then there are enough veteran organizations out there, God, between nonprofits to whatever, that are willing to help. So again, Scott, we said Iron Freedom Foundation is the one that took me on my, I did 2 kayaking trips with these guys down the Devil's River here in Texas. I mean, again, the experience is just crazy. So being able to find something like that, and there's a ton out there, who maybe can help with a little bit of that, to keep that, pocket, the cop, right? So Scott, I was real quick. I would say being a cop in Baltimore, people are like, well, why'd you leave being a cop in Baltimore? I had a 380 put to the back of my head doing a drug deal legitimately. And, the family was like, all right, you're done. Which is why I left. But then I deployed a year later as a JTAC. So,
switch one for the other, right?
Yeah, right. That's exactly what happened. So at that point, but I would tell you that that's the only why. So, but I miss my days as being a police officer, and I still have a ton of friends on the Baltimore Police Department. But your time in your life, right? We're going deep. It keeps moving, right? And your past is here, but you're going to keep moving with it, and you can bring those people with you, right? There's going to be people that you're friends with, and there's other people who you didn't know, and you can bring them with you. And the organizations that are out there, I mean, it's phenomenal. Like, they're out there. So yeah.
It is. And you're exactly right, Dan. And, one thing real quick, I love when you go and do those because you're not selfish. You share
Oh yeah.
on LinkedIn your experience. You put it out there and folks see that. They're like, oh, geez, and they look into it and they say, okay, wow, that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
Man, maybe I want to do that too.
Yeah.
So you're sharing the goodness of what you're experiencing, and
Definitely.
you're laying the groundwork for other folks to maybe stick their foot in the pool with doing something like that. The outdoors is amazing. And another thing, Chris, is volunteering. Volunteering is huge. For me, I love helping people, and what you get back in return through volunteering touches your heart and soul almost like nothing else can. Especially when you see that what you and the organization are doing are having an impact, and that they're having an effect on people's lives for the good. So that's a tremendous way, to try. I always say when you leave the military, you're going to have a little bit of a hole in your heart. And, maybe it's bigger for some, and it's difficult to pack that hole. And you do over time, but you want to do it the right way. You want to do it with the right people, with the right things. And so being proactive in that is huge. So now, Dan, man, we're crushing it on time. We're at like an hour and 21
this
minutes.
It's going to turn into a Joe Rogan episode.
That's right. Well, hey, there's something, I have two things I want to ask.
Yep.
I'll ask the easiest question first, which is, I'm looking to buy a couple t-shirts, which I can't wait to do because I already know the ones I want to buy. Size wise, I think I'm 5'10". I think we're probably about the same build. What size shirt are you wearing right now?
Large.
Okay, cool. Then I
Large.
will order a large. Yeah, because sometimes
I
have to order an extra large.
You work out too, though, but I like your large. I don't like mediums. Mediums might be a little bit tighter, but I go large.
Yeah. So cool. Because I sometimes I have to get extra large, and sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Right. So okay, cool. So that was the easy one. So the next question, working where you're working, what's the funnest part about your job? This should be an easy question, but I think there's so much that's fun. It might be hard for you to pick that one thing.
Yeah. I'm not held to a time clock, right? I don't punch in at 9 a.m. I don't punch out at 5. And so most people might be like, oh, that sounds great. It also is, I might punch in at 6:30, but I'm not held to a clock.
Right.
If I start work at 6 a.m., and at 2 a.m., right, whatever, if I want to think 8 hours, my day doesn't really consist of 8 hours. But that's even salary, right? And I would again, to help anyone out, when you're looking at a job for benefits, maybe some days I work 12, right? Maybe a lot of days I work 12. Maybe I work 10 and then 8, but I would tell you, crap, maybe some I only work 4, right? But I can tell you I work more than 40, right? I work more than 40 a week, but I don't punch a clock.
Well, I wasn't expecting.
I'm on the clock right now, right? So people in culture, we don't call HR, we call people in culture. Our people in culture, I'm on the clock right now. So, I've been sitting here with you for, 2 hours, but I'm on the clock.
Right. Well, I wasn't expecting that to be the answer, but it's a good answer because.
What'd you expect?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I was expecting some crazy story about, what you guys do, but
no,
but I think that's a great.
Yes, Scott, no, it's a business. Like there's stuff, like there's meetings every day and there's product and stuff. But that's what I'm saying. My not punching a clock though allows me to do, taking any photographs that I take, maybe go shoot some archery, maybe go run, maybe go do some stuff. But I think that is the funnest part, when I look at it, it's just like, you know what, like I don't punch the clock.
Right. And expanding it out like you did, lends to the credence of why that's important because, you have that flexibility. Yep. And I think so many people are starting to see that maybe that's what I want to do, not that the corporate 9 to 5, and there's certainty there. Yeah. But having that bandwidth to be able to do what you do, and then having folks that you work for trust you to manage your time and to be productive, that's a lot that they give right there. Obviously you're going to live up to it, but it's nice to know that, you have that flexibility and you're going to get your job done, and you're going to put the hours in you need, and you can break up your day accordingly. So yeah,
No,
that's
100%.
great that you have that.
It is, but it comes in with trust and time. I mean, so Scott,
Sure.
again, when you were a battalion, right, commander? Or
Yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
You weren't a battalion commander to start. I mean, you were a captain, blah, 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 and you worked way up. So I took a call from Evan probably 15 minutes before this, right? And he's going somewhere, but he called me up randomly and gave me, like, I'm looking down because I had a notebook where I was taking some notes where he called me. Yeah. And so I can get taskings, but again, to be able to have that freedom, because I earned it, right? Day one, it probably was a little bit more. And then, yeah, and that freedom grows because it's like, okay, here's a tasking, get it done. But the taskings that you get even as a battalion commander, right, brigade commander, or even at my level, not saying that I'm at that level, but I get a tasking, again, I'm looking down at my notebook where I took my notes, that it's not going to get solved right now, right?
Right.
Even in 2 hours, it's not going to get solved. Like, it's a bigger project, right? And so, yeah, I'll put the time in after I get off this call, right? And blah, 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 in time. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
that-
yeah,
Yeah.
in talking about that, commander's intent is huge,
Yep.
right? Expressing to the folks that work with you and for you what
Yep.
your intent is, and that kind of sets the stage, and then they go
Yep.
and do their thing.
Yep.
You're not looking over their shoulder. You're not constantly calling them or emailing them, hey, what's going on? You're letting them do their thing. You
Yep.
prescribe what you want, and then you do follow up, right? There's the
Right.
time and a place for follow up,
Sure.
but you know who those folks are over time, who you can trust to get things done. And those are the folks that are going to help you grow your business. And
Yep.
you'll find out who you don't necessarily give that to.
Oh,
some
exactly.
folks may be really great under the 9 to 5.
Yep.
Other folks might have a hard time balancing that, right? So it's but anyhow, no, that was a cool answer. All right, well, look, it's almost 12:30. So for your sake, and for I'm sure Sarah probably has a few things that she's got to hop to. So we're gonna call index here. For
Okay.
those of you that don't know what that means, an end of exercise. There,
Right.
we're
Knock it off.
gonna put a cap on it. But hey, Dan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your service. Thank you for what you do now, because what you guys are doing, as you explained, you're helping veterans. You guys are doing cool stuff to help veterans. It's exciting to see your brand growing the way it is. Godspeed to what you guys do.
Thanks.
And if you could, like I said, get up with Sarah at some point, because I'm sure that she would love to bring you on to other parts of what she does under the Power of Our Story, because you've got a great story, and you'll connect with folks that are looking for a connection in this regard. So yeah, Chris, thanks for staying with us as well. And I appreciate everyone that came on and, listened and had to roll. Thanks, guys. And we will see you next Thursday.